So now it's June 2016, still haven't been doing Uber. So now at this point, I'm like really working hard on this new business. So my first business was event planning. So once I lost my job, I was really focused on my new business, which was Creative Collab. It was an online co-working community. So I was really focused on getting that up off the ground and getting people registered into the community so that I could have a profitable business and have money coming in. And what I learned from that also is that it's so hard trying to run two businesses at the same time, especially if it's just you. So I had to put my event planning company on a back burner because I was really focused on getting this new company off the ground. So about sometime in June, or like I think it was sometime in June, a young lady had messaged me on Facebook. So I had been promoting Creative Collab, the new business, and she reached out and just saying that she really loved the concept. She was so interested in learning more about the community, as far as like looking to join or be a part of it. And then she had mentioned that she had a similar idea, but she had been scared to launch it because it was something that was fairly new. Like a lot of people weren't doing like online co-working communities at the time. So me, I'm a person where it's enough for all of us out here to win and to be successful. So I can't just be the only person with an online co-working community or membership program. So I encouraged her, like, go ahead and start your community. Like, keep me posted. Like, I'm looking forward to, learning and hearing more about what you're getting ready to do. So literally 2 weeks later, I see on Facebook that she has her event coming up. And I'm like, dang, that was fast. She put that together real quick. So I go ahead and I click on the link and I'm reading about her event, and it's literally copy and paste of one of my events. So I did online co-working as well as in-person co-working events too. So literally the copy that I used for my in-person co-working events at coffee shops, she literally copied and pasted and made it for her event and was like promoting it. I had a complete meltdown. Like, I just cried. Like, I was so hurt. I was like devastated, like somebody had died. And I don't know, I think it hurt me so bad because one, I've, lost my job. I've moved to Atlanta. Things aren't really going as great as I had anticipated. I don't really have any steady income coming in, and I'm really trying to work on this project to get it off the ground, and then boom, somebody just literally copy and paste and create it and make it their own. So I ended up sending her event to my mentor, and she was like, oh no, she didn't. So she ended up sending me her attorney's information, and she was like, you need to send her a cease and desist letter. So I reached out to the attorney, but in the meantime, I'm like, she got to take this down right now. So I literally the next day was supposed to be flying to Detroit for my mom and my sister's birthday, and I'm literally spending the night crying, typing up a cease and desist letter. So I sent the cease and desist letter out. I think in the letter I put that it had to be taken down immediately. I can't even remember if I gave her 24 hours, but basically like it had to get taken down. So I'm heading to Detroit. I end up getting a voicemail from her, and she's like super apologetic, saying that she had just hired a new intern and she had sent the intern my events as inspiration, but not to literally copy and paste. So I'm just like, whatever, she apologized, I'll leave it at that. Now that event was in Detroit while I was in Detroit. So one, like me, I was going to support, but I also was trying to see like, well, let me see if she's really genuine. Like, is she really going to try to redo what I've done? So I went to the event, met her for the first time, and that was that. So one, in that I just learned that one, like, you can't stop anybody from like duplicating. Well, one, you can send them a cease and desist letter, but don't like just stop what you're doing and just have like a complete meltdown. Have a meltdown, but just don't let it be like forever. Like, I can't sit and try to figure out who's stealing my stuff or who's doing something similar to me. Like, what God has given me is going to be mine, and whoever the people it is that he wants to send to be in my business, he's going to do that, and nobody can stop that. So that just helped me to be mindful of that, because that was also not the only time that I had an issue with copy and pasting with that specific person. So about, I believe it was like maybe the fall time, like October, I did an online webinar, and then she had an online webinar. I click on the webinar, literally copy and paste again. So one, like, you can keep sending out cease and desist letters, but it just gets to a point where like I just had to block her. Like, one, this is a distraction. Like, I'm getting distracted trying to figure out and watch your social media or figure out what you're doing to make sure it's not similar to mine. Like, just let people be. Like, if they want to copy you, send a cease and desist letter and just move on. So that was that. So end of June, beginning of July is Essence Festival time. So earlier in the year, I had got approved to do media coverage for Essence Festival for my event planning company. So at the time, I had already, when I got it approved for it, I had booked my hotel already, but I didn't book my flight because I didn't know at the time if I was going to be flying from Chicago or if I was going to be flying from Atlanta. So now it's like literally, a week or so or 2 weeks before Essence Festival, and I'm like trying to figure out like how am I going to get there. I just got my car fixed, but I didn't want to put it on the road and me driving down south to New Orleans and something happens to my car and I'm like literally stranded on the side of the road. And then two, I couldn't buy a plane ticket because at this point flights were like $500. So I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to get to Essence Festival? So I just put my pride to the side and I booked the Greyhound ticket. So it was literally $50 to take the Greyhound to Essence. And I think that's a testament within itself, because I think a lot of opportunities we miss out on because we think that, oh, I can't afford to buy a plane ticket to fly there, or, oh, I can't, afford gas money to drive 12 hours or however long it is. But sometimes, like, if you have to take the Greyhound, then you have to take the Greyhound. So that was like a humbling experience for me, because I'm like, I'm on a Greyhound going to Essence Festival. But I didn't share that because one, it wasn't anybody's business at the time, and two, you don't want to be saying like, oh, like I'm heading to Essence on a Greyhound. But it was just a humbling experience for me because I got approved and I made sure that I made a way to get there despite what my current circumstances were. And I think that we need to take that into consideration when we have been called or led or have a desire to do something. Like, just being mindful, like, don't let anything stand in your way of you going after what it is that you want. Even if you have to take a bus, even if you have to take a train, like, do what you have to do in that moment and just know that it's just temporary. You won't be catching the bus forever. You won't be taking Greyhounds forever. It's going to be a point where you're literally taking flights and just swiping your card without even thinking about it. So just take that into consideration when it comes to going after what it is that you truly desire to do or what God has called you to do. I started driving Uber one particular day. I went ahead and prayed. I just prayed for traveling grace and mercy. I prayed for protection, just for God to keep me covered, for me not to get any accidents. And then I'm literally getting ready to start driving Uber. I get on Lakeshore Drive and this lady sideswipes me. And then not only does she sideswipe me, she kept going. So I ended up still being able to get her license plate information. But as I'm at the police station making a report, I just almost had a breakdown. Like, Lord, I just prayed this morning and asked for you to keep me safe, and you let me get into a car accident. And then all I could hear is God just saying, like, but were you able to walk away safely? Do you have any broken bones? Do you have any broken arms, broken legs? And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. So I think a lot of times, like, we go ahead and pray for things, which you should do, but we don't necessarily get the exact answers to our prayers that we expect. So did I pray for traveling grace and mercy? Did I pray for protection? Yes. Did I get that? Yes. I still was in a car accident, but God still kept me. So I think it's really, really important to be able to focus on the good things and being able to focus on what God has kept you from. So I think that was one of the lessons that I learned in that moment, was just being grateful for the small things, just being grateful for life, and just being thankful that I even prayed that morning. Like, imagine if I didn't pray. So I know a lot of times we get so caught up on blaming the enemy for things that are happening around us. And ultimately, yes, sometimes it is the enemy. But two, always remember that even if the enemy is attacking, like, God's allowing it. So why is he allowing this to happen is for a specific reason, whether it's to build your trust in him, build your faith in him, just being able to rely on him in certain circumstances. So I get back from Essence Festival, I'm back home in Atlanta. I check my mailbox and I have 2 checks in the mail, literally unexpected checks. I wasn't expecting anything. And I opened up the checks, and one of the checks was from the accident that I was in Chicago when the lady sideswiped me. So I had went ahead and paid my deductible to get my car fixed while they tried to figure out who was at fault. So now it's June and they weren't able to figure out who was at fault, so they refunded me half of my deductible. So that was money that I was not expecting to get back. And it also came at a perfect time because I had just went to Essence Festival, spent money in Essence Festival. And not only did I get the check from my insurance company, but I also got like another random check in the mail too. So I think sometimes we doubt whether we're doing the right thing. Like, yes, I feel like God has led me to where I was. He told me to move to Atlanta. I had the okay to go to Essence Festival. I didn't even qualify to be approved for media passes for Essence Festival, but God allowed it to happen. But I think sometimes we doubt, am I making the right decision? Should I have moved here? Should I have gone to Essence Festival? Should I be doing something else? And me coming home to those checks in the mail was like literally a sign from God for me. Like, God was saying, like, I got you. Like, the money that you spent in Essence Festival, you literally just got it right back. I came home to 2 checks in the mail. So now literally every day I go to check my mailbox for a check. I'm not expecting anything, but I'm just going in expectation, waiting for God to bless me with something. And I also, after that, I started to pray for checks in the mail. And I've literally gotten random checks in the mail since then. Not very, very often, but it's been randomly. So that's how I started to pray for checks in the mail, because literally when I was at a time where I had no job and no steady income, and I'm just walking off of faith in each and everything that I'm doing, and then God is just sending little signs and reminders to let me know that I'm on the right path and that He's my provider. So I'm really, really grateful for that. And that's the story behind me receiving checks in the mail, and I'll share some more stories about that as well. So moving on, it is now September. So I've been driving Uber in Atlanta for a couple months now, and one thing that I noticed, like when I was in Chicago, I could literally make $1,000 in a week. It was super easy. I started driving here in Atlanta and it was completely different. I literally struggled to make $500 in a week. So the money that I had anticipated coming in through Uber and extra income, like it literally was cut in half. So that was one thing that I didn't take into consideration. So in Chicago, it's very fast paced, it's pick up and go atmosphere. People are taking the train, people are taking Ubers. Here in Atlanta, everybody is literally driving. So it wasn't as many people taking Uber than it was in Chicago. And of course, Chicago is a bigger city too. So that was something that I didn't take into consideration. Another thing, moving here, my car insurance went up. So some bills that I thought like, oh, I'm moving to the South, my bills are gonna decrease. Some of my bills actually increased. So I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't really plan for this. So now we're in September. It's my birthday month. I've literally been unemployed for 6 months and I started off with $10,000. We're now in September and I'm down to $2,000. So I started applying for part-time jobs and seasonal jobs. So I'm thinking, well, I'll do Uber on the side. I have some money coming in from my business. Let's see if I can figure out if I can get a seasonal job, if I can get a part-time job. And I even started applying for contract positions. So my background is accounting. I'm like, contract positions I know at least can get paid $50 an hour just from past experiences with me working with contractors within the accounting field. So I'm like, if I could just get a contracting position for 3 months, I'm good. So I'm literally applying for every type of job. Literally, I started applying for waitressing jobs, bartending. I've never waitressed or bartended a day in my life, but I made my resume to appear as if I had. But I couldn't get any jobs. I had interviews with like multiple stores at the mall for seasonal. And I'm like, wow, I can't even get a seasonal job. Like, what is going on here? So now it's September, my birthday's here. Joya, who helped me move here to Atlanta, she was coming down for my birthday, and I was just like in kind of like a depressed mood. Like I only got $2,000 in my bank account. My rent is $1,000 itself minimum without utilities or anything. So I wasn't like really in the mood to do much. Like we still hung out, but I was just kind of thinking every time I was having to do something, like, here go $50 that's being taken away, here go $100. And I don't think that I was able to enjoy my birthday and also her being here as much as I would have liked to, looking back. So literally 3 weeks later, Joya passes away, like unexpectedly. And I think that that was probably one of the hardest things that I went through within like that low season of my life, from losing my job and not working and trying to find income. And you literally have a friend who has dropped everything to help you pack in Chicago and move down to Atlanta and help you drive a whole 18-foot truck down to Atlanta, and then come back in September for your birthday, and then not knowing that that's literally the last time that you're going to see that person. So it was something like her passing that went viral on social media, various media outlets and news stations. And I remember driving Uber and my dad called me, and he was just calling. It had nothing to do with Joya passing. So I sent him the voicemail. One of my friends called me, I think Kiera called me next, and I sent her the voicemail. Then my best friend, Talisha, called me. I sent her the voicemail. I'm like, why does everybody keep calling me? And then Kiera called again, and then Talisha called again, and like all of these numbers are blowing up on my phone. So I have somebody that I'm driving, like to drop someone off in Uber. So he ended up wanting to make a stop at a store. So I asked, like, do you mind if I take this call? So I talked to my best friend. She's like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. Everybody keeps calling me. She's like, well, people keep calling me, like sending their condolences about Joya. Like, have you talked to her today? I'm like, what? I'm like, yeah, I talked to her earlier this morning and this afternoon. So we're just trying to like still figure everything out. Kiera's calling me back, letting me know that somebody has sent her a news article that a young woman passed away. I don't think they had mentioned any names at the time, but it had the street address, and I was like, that's the apartment building that she lives in. So at this point, like I'm on social media trying to figure stuff out, like what's going on, trying to look at family members' pages, and one of the family members confirmed this. Kiera had talked to Sydney, which is Joya's best friend from like childhood. So at that point, I called my mom, and I literally had like a cry from the pit of my stomach, like my whole world had just broke down. And just in that moment, I don't know, it was very difficult, and it was really hard to believe as well. Like, I just talked to her earlier today, like, this can't be true. So I was like, well, maybe like it was an accident or something, and you know, maybe she's okay. Like, maybe they'll just give, you know, updates or something later. Like, I'm going home and I'm going to sleep, and I'll try this day again tomorrow. That was my whole mindset. So I think my initial response was denial, and me just trying to process everything, and just with it being something that literally kept getting picked up from news station to news station to media outlet to people sharing on social media, and it was just a lot to process at the time. So that next day, I just remember thinking, like, me and my friends, like, we pray every day. We pray every day, but we have a prayer call that we have weekly. I'm like, we pray weekly, we pray daily. When everybody or anybody needs prayer, like, we're literally praying. I know sometimes people say, like, well, pray for me. And you'll say, well, I'll be praying for you. Like, no, somebody need prayer. We're saying, like, praying now, prayed already. And I just kept thinking, like, we've been doing this prayer call faithfully for at least the last year. And then I'm trying to like rationalize and justify things and trying to put it together and make it make sense. So I'm like, we literally just got off of a prayer call less than 24 hours ago. And like, you allowed this to happen. Like, how? Like, what was the purpose of us praying faithfully? Or what's the purpose of praying at all if something like this is going to happen? We literally just all covered each other in prayer literally the night before. So then I'm like, well, okay, like, you allow her to go through this. And that's fine. I know sometimes we have to go through things. It may not make sense now, but we all have various trials and tribulations that we have to face in life. So I'm like, not only, God, did you allow her to go through this traumatic experience, you didn't even allow her to like overcome it, or you didn't even allow her to be able to make it out of it. Like, I just kept thinking like what God? Like, is there a God? Like, I stopped believing in God at that point. Like, what was the point of praying? Like, what was the point of doing all of this stuff that we've been doing? And it didn't mean anything. And those were my thoughts at the moment. So it was a lot for me to process. I remember talking to my ex-boyfriend's mom, and I just remember just talking like, well, God allowed this to happen. And so I remember the next day, people were calling to check on me. My ex-boyfriend's mom called to check on me, and she's like one of my second moms. I can literally go to her for anything. I can go to her for prayer, for anything. I can go to her for anything spiritually. Like, it's literally one of my second moms. So I remember like getting ready to vent to her, like, I can't believe that God allowed this to happen. And she immediately like just cut me dead in my tracks, like, we're not gonna do that. That's not what we're about to do right now. She's like, before Julia was born, like, God knew her beginning date and God knew her end date. God knew when he was going to bring her into this world, and God knew when he was going to take her out of this world to be with him. And I think a lot of times it's easy to console others when they're experiencing loss and grief, and I'm able to be encouraging to other people, but at that time that I needed it for myself, like, it all just went out the window, and I forgot about that. Like, everything literally happens for a reason, and although some things, like I said, may be the cause of the enemy, like, God still allowed it. And God knows how each and every one of us are going to leave this world, and there's absolutely nothing that we can do about it. We can't choose how we leave. We have literally no control over it. You literally just have to live your best days here on earth and be obedient and just do God's will and fulfill the purpose that he has for you. And everything else is like literally in his hands. And I had to relearn that in that process, because like literally like my world had been like completely turned upside down, and I had to come to grips with the fact that God still had some type of say-so in this whole thing. And God is not a God who makes mistakes. And I just had to keep saying like it happened for a reason. And although I don't know specifically why, and even to this day I still don't know, I've learned things from it. But the specific way as far as like how she passed, like I still haven't like come to grips with that. But I'm at peace knowing that she's with God, and his purpose will be revealed in his time. So that was my first time literally questioning God. I had literally got to a space where I couldn't pray. Like at one point I didn't even want to pray. I stopped going to church. I didn't go to church for the rest of the year. I don't think a lot of people know that. I'm the person that creates these Bible scripture challenges, and although I was creating them, I wasn't in the Word still. I was in the Word to do the challenges, but I wasn't going to church. I wasn't sending my morning messages out, and I would get people, you know, they will send their condolences. They know that I was grieving, but they were just expressing like how much they miss the morning messages. And for me, that was something that I needed in that season, just to know that what I'm sending out each morning, like, it's literally touching people, and the fact that they aren't getting it, like they're missing like a wholeness within themselves or within their day. So that kind of gave me the motivation to want to start back at some point. But even when I gained the desire to want to pray, it was like a muzzle was over my mouth, like, and I know it was the enemy. Like, I could not open my mouth to pray to save my life. Like, I could literally try to speak, and it was like, you know how a dog has like a muzzle over their mouth? That's how I felt. And it was like the enemy had a huge stronghold on me. And even with me stop going to church, at one point I had the desire to go back to church. And every Sunday I could not get out of bed. Like, I could not get out of bed to save my life. Even noon service, like 12 o'clock is the latest service, I couldn't get out the bed at 12 o'clock to go to church. And it was so crazy because during the week I'm up at 5 o'clock, I'm up at 6 o'clock, I'm up at 7, 8 o'clock. I can get up in the morning during the week. But the moment that it's time for me to go to church, like, I literally could not get out the bed. So I didn't go to church for the remainder of that year. And one thing that I did start doing though, after Julia's funeral, that's when I started my prayer closet. And I think that's something that still helped me stay connected to God, and just help me see things from a different perspective, and even to help me deal with things. So one thing I felt that God dealt with me in that season was forgiveness. I had to ask for forgiveness for her ex-fiance. And surprisingly, that was probably one of the easiest things, or the easiest like persons to forgive. So I didn't really have an issue with that. So with God dealing with me with forgiveness, I actually learned what forgiveness really was. I, thought that, I say I forgive somebody and I forgive them, but they can do something and something will rise up, or emotions will rise up, or I'll get mad about something that happened years ago. So with God helping me to deal with forgiveness, one, I had to first acknowledge like the hurt, the pain, the losses, the emotions, and all of the wounds that I had experienced from past relationships. And I had to really acknowledge those things. Like, I had to literally journal for the people that I had to forgive, like what was really still bottled up inside and what happened for me to feel that type of way. And then the second thing was that I had to forgive freely. And I thought that I had forgiven freely, but to forgive freely means that and you're comfortable with the fact that nobody owes you anything. And for a particular person, I still was expecting something like an apology or just something. It was something that I was expecting, like I forgave this person, but I'm still expecting them to apologize, or I'm still expecting them to do some grand gesture. And that's not forgiveness. Like, you have to forgive people freely and forgive them without them apologizing, or without them doing any grand gestures, or without having any expectations at all. And that was something that was really difficult for me. The third thing that I realized with forgiveness is, one, you have to confess sins, and that's sins that you've committed to. Like, a lot of times with relationships or brokenness or conflicts or things of that nature, a lot of times we focus so much on what the other person has done that we don't focus on what we've really done. So I had to spend time like confessing sins. I had to confess bitterness and resentment, and that just took me to like a whole different level, especially with a lot of people reaching out to send condolences, and a lot of those people I hadn't talked to. And I was the queen of cutting people off. Like, if you do something to me, cut off. Like, I can cut people off easily and not look back. And I'm not that person anymore, but that's the type of person that I was. So as people were sending their condolences, like, I had to literally go in prayer. Like, God, is this somebody that you would have to come back into my life, or is this somebody that I just need to reconcile with and just let them be and love them from afar? So there were some people that God wanted to be back in my life, and I allowed it. And there were some people that God didn't want back in my life, but I was able to still reconcile the situation or the relationship and just still love them from a distance. And I don't have anything against them. I still pray for them, but a lot of times I think with forgiveness, we think that we have to welcome those people back into our lives, and that's not always the case. You can still forgive people and let them go their separate ways and still love them from a distance. So that was something that that God dealt with me in that season. So I'm experiencing loss and grief, but now I'm mending relationships and reconciling and learning what the true meaning and experience is of forgiveness. So I always try to find, like, what is God trying to teach me in this season? What is God trying to teach me through this experience or this moment? And even though I experienced like a huge loss, there's so much that I've still been able to learn and to gain from it, from me starting my prayer closet and literally praying for things for myself and even for others, and they've literally been coming to pass. So my prayer life like shot through the roof. Like, had Julia not passed, I would have never started a prayer closet, or I would have always made an excuse, or, oh, I'll wait until I can have a pretty prayer closet and paint and decorate it. And God isn't really concerned about that. Like, He's concerned about your heart, and He's concerned about you being able to pray and just be able to submit to Him and even be able to hear Him and see what it is that He wants to deal with you on, and what it is that He wants you to pray for. So those are some things that I was able to gain from this, just a increased prayer life. And even with me not working, I had literally friends who didn't even know my circumstance with not working, and they were calling me for prayer for jobs, and I'm praying for them for jobs, and they're getting jobs, and I'm still over here trying to find a job. But I still was thankful for them to reach out to me and even ask for prayer, and then for me to even be able to pray for them and even still be excited and just thankful when they did get the positions. I think a lot of times we miss out on our own blessings because we're praying for something and then we aren't even able to be happy or congratulate people who are experiencing the blessings that we've been praying for. Like, maybe God hasn't blessed you yet because you aren't even happy for the people around you, that He's blessing. So that was one thing that I noticed. Like, I never was down. I never was mad that people came to me for prayer about jobs. I just prayed. I prayed for them. But I feel like every time that I was ready to give up and I'm like, well, maybe I need to move back home to Detroit. I'll start applying for jobs in Detroit. I'll start looking for places to live in Detroit. And every time I will open up my laptop to start to look for jobs and start to look for a place to live in Detroit, God would always say, you're doing everything but what you're supposed to be doing. So I close my laptop and I'll continue working on my business. And then something else will happen and I'm like, well, Lord, I've been praying for 6 months now and I haven't heard a word from you. And I open up my laptop and He'll say the same thing. You're doing everything but what you're supposed to be doing. So I had got to a point where I'm just like, God, when you figure out how you're going to get me out of this situation, then you let me know. And I think that's what God was waiting on me to do, to surrender. Even though I was taking action and trying to apply for jobs and contract positions and trying to figure out if I should move back home or not, God just wanted me to surrender and stop trying to be in control of everything. So that's one thing that I even learned in that season as well. It's fine to act and it's fine to make plans, but make sure that you're not making plans and then praying, asking God to fulfill your needs. Like, you should be seeking God first to figure out what it is that He wants you to do, and then go in prayer. I was kind of doing the opposite, and I feel like that's why nothing really was working out. And every time I would start to deviate, God would say, you're doing everything but what you're supposed to be doing. So now I do absolutely nothing until I have heard from God Even if I have a desire for something, I'm praying to get guidance and clarity from God. And I think that's really important. A lot of times we get ourselves into situations because we're doing what we want to do and then asking God to bless it, when what you really should be doing is figuring out what God wants you to do, and you would save yourself from so much more roadblocks and detours.